Hey guys, this week I'm going to show you guys what we had for dinner. So I started off on Tuesday by slicing up a clean chicken breast. I went ahead and cut it in little slices, and then I cut it up in cubes. And I decided to cut about an inch or so, 1.5 inch squares. Then in a deep pot, I went ahead and filled it up with water. I'm going to let that come to a boil. In a pan, I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, and I'm going to add my chicken breast. And I'm going to try to saute it around a little bit until it gets a little crispy. Then in my deep pot, once it comes to a boil, I'm going to add my American Beauty penne pasta. And I'm just going to throw that in there. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to taste, just to flavor the water. And I'm cooking that for 10 minutes because I like my pasta super soft. And then on my chicken, I'm going to season it with salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, which are my absolute favorites. You'll see me use that a lot on here. And personally, I think I added a little bit too much salt, but it was perfectly fine. We still ate it. You just add it to taste. Alright, I went ahead and removed my chicken from the pan, drained my pasta. And in that same pan where I boiled my pasta, I went ahead and added some olive oil. I'm going to go ahead and mince a large garlic clove. And I was really struggling with this garlic clove because it was so freaking big. Oh my lord. Okay, so once I got the garlic situation figured out, I went ahead and added a whole jar of Bertolli Alfredo pasta, which is my favorite pasta. It's got such good flavor to it. And I'm going to doctor it up a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I think I added, I don't know, maybe like half a cup or so. And then I had some leftover. Then I added a little bit of mozzarella cheese. I would say also around half a cup. And then I went ahead and mixed all of that together until it started to melt. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of 2% milk and add it to my jar to really drain out all of the liquid left over in the jar. Typically I would add heavy whipping cream, but I didn't have any, so I just used what I had. And I just want to make sure that I get everything out. And then once I see that my cheese is melting, I'm going to go ahead and add my pasta and my chicken. It's super easy. I did go back ahead and add a little bit of black pepper. So yeah, I added my chicken first, let the sauce incorporate in there, and then I added my pasta. And I mixed all of that around. This was a super easy meal on Tuesday. I love making this pasta because it's just so fast and it tastes so good. It kind of reminds me of the Applebee's 3-cheese penne pasta. So I tried adding some tomatoes and I was out of tomatoes. I only had literally the tiniest piece. So I had 3 pieces of tomato on my pasta. If you have any, I suggest you chop up a good amount and add it on there. It adds such a good freshness to it. And I served my pasta with a slice of Asiago sourdough bread with a little bit of butter, and that was dinner for Tuesday. Alright, on Wednesday, I'm going to start off by making some mashed potatoes. So I went ahead and peeled 5 potatoes. You just want to go ahead and make sure you peel those really well, and then I'm going to slice those up in little quarters, squares, I don't know. You just want to chop them up very small so they're easier to boil. They cook a lot faster too. Anyways, and then I drained them, and then I got my pork chops out, and I'm going to go ahead and season them with my usual suspects: onion powder, garlic powder, black pepper, salt, and then I decided to throw in a little bit of paprika. And I just go ahead and add all of my seasonings to each side. These ended up being really thin pork chops, but I don't know, it looked a lot bigger at the store, in the packages, I thought like the pork chops were a lot bigger than they were, but it was fine. They ended up tasting really good. So I brought my water to a boil, or I'm bringing it to a boil, sorry. And then I'm gonna add some peas to a pan or to a pot. My husband froze these last year, and I've never cooked like real frozen peas, so I didn't know how to do it. So I just put them in a pot with a little bit of water, and I just let that come to a boil. Then in a pan, I added a little bit of butter and olive oil. And I think I added a little bit too much. I realized that when I was adding the pork chops, but it was fine. So I think I was searing them for about 3 minutes per side, or 4 minutes per one side, 3 minutes for the other side. Alright, and then once my water started boiling, I went ahead and added my potatoes. And then after 3 minutes, I flipped over my pork chops. And then you can just see my peas just going crazy back there. They were just like on super high heat. I should have probably lowered it. Alright, and then I tried searing the fatty side of my pork chops. I tried searing it on all sides, but I think because I had so much like butter and stuff, it just took a little bit longer. So I tried searing them on all sides. Then in that same pan, I went ahead and added some minced garlic from a jar. It was just pre-minced garlic. Some raw honey, I just squeezed some on there. And then typically when I make my honey pork chops, I add chicken broth. I didn't have any, so I just added a little bit of water and then some chicken bouillon powder. And it tasted just fine. So if you don't have chicken broth, just go ahead and do it this way. Then I added a little bit of more honey. And then I realized that I probably added way too much water, so I tried cooking this down for a good 10 minutes until it got like really thick and saucy. And then I added my pork chops back in there so they would get flavor. And then I don't know if you can tell in the background, my peas, the water, I went to go do something and the water completely like evaporated, so I had to add more water. And then I added a little bit of butter and then brought that back up to a boil again. And then I turned it off and my peas were ready. And then once my potatoes were fork tender, I went ahead and put them in a Tupperware. I added some cream cheese, some 2% milk, some salt, some pepper, some butter. And I put them in a Tupperware so I could just, once dinner was over, I could just go ahead and put them in the fridge and put them away, which was really nice. It was less dishes to clean, which is always nice. And then I just went ahead and mashed that up. You just make your mashed potatoes however you normally make them. Obviously, I was making a mess, like always. I am seriously super clumsy, but it's fine. Then I went ahead and added my pork chops to a baking dish. And then I added that sauce. I don't know if you can tell, but that is super thick by now because I cooked it down for so long. And then I baked it in the oven at 350 for 10 minutes. And then that was my dish. That's what it looked like. It was a really good dinner for Wednesday. We loved it. Alright, on Thursday, I'm going to go ahead and make Korean beef. So I'm going to start off by adding some rice to my steamer and then the same amount of water to my steamer. Then I just put it on cook. Then I have some ground beef that I'm going to try to break up really finely. So for Korean beef, you want to break up your hamburger meat as much as you can and try to get it as crispy as you can. And then I'm going to start off with my sauce. I added half a cup of soy sauce, 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, and then I used low sodium, but if you have normal soy sauce, that works even better. That's just all I had on hand. And then I do 1/8 of a teaspoon of ground ginger, a pinch of crushed red peppers. I did 3 minced garlic cloves, and then I just mix that around. And then I actually got this recipe from Laura in the kitchen. I'm gonna link her video down below, but I just doctored up a little bit to my liking, for my family's liking too. So I covered my ground beef and then I went to go do something. I came back and they were kind of clumped together, so I added a little bit of vegetable oil, about a tablespoon, and then I just tried cutting that up. And then I grabbed some chives and then I chopped those up finely. Honestly, I love this recipe. If you're tired of making the same recipes with hamburger meat, I would really recommend trying this. It's such a good meal. So do you see how crispy my ground beef is? It is super crispy. I went ahead and added my sauce to that, and then I just let it come to a boil. There's not much to do there. You just bring it to a boil, then you turn it off and move it from the heat. Then once my white rice was done in a bowl, I put my white rice, then my ground beef, some chives, and a bunch of sesame seeds, and oh man, this is so good. You guys, if you try anything from this week's video, try that. It is so good. I make it all the time. Anyways, so for Friday, I was home alone and I decided to make some breaded chicken with this tiny piece of chicken I had left over from earlier in the week. So I went ahead and beat my meat, made it really thin. And then I always do a mixture of panko and normal breading. And obviously it's always Italian. I just think it has such good flavor. So I pass it through my egg wash mixture and then I pass it through my breading mixture. I went ahead and added a little bit of vegetable oil and I fried it on each side for a few minutes. I think it was like 2 to 3 minutes. I just eyeball it until it gets crispy. Then I was trying to clear out my fridge from everything I had, so I just used all my leftovers. So on Monday I used white shells, so I went and heated those up with some leftover mashed potatoes. I had some cheese, bacon, and sour cream, and that was my dinner for Friday night. And then also I love this hot sauce. I don't know if it's a Hispanic thing or what, but I love it. And then I especially love the way it tastes with breaded chicken. And then the day that I made my Korean beef, I also made a cake, but I wanted to save my recipe until the end. So I am using the book, Recipes from the Heart. It's a gift. And I started off by adding 2 cups of sugar, 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, half a teaspoon of salt, and then 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. The recipe did call for 1 teaspoon of allspice, but I don't like that, so I didn't add it. Also, I didn't have it, but I just think it's such a strong flavor. Anyways, and then in a different bowl, I went ahead and beat 4 eggs. And then to my mixture, I added my 4 eggs, 3 cups of grated carrots, and then I added 1.5 cups of oil. And I just mixed that around for a few seconds. Then I went ahead and added my flour. And then I went ahead and added all of this to this tiny baking dish, and I realized it was way too small, so I had to move it to a 9x13 pan. I put that in the oven for 40 minutes at 350, and then I started my frosting, and I didn't even use all of this frosting. I just used a tiny portion of it. It was 8 ounces of cream cheese softened, 1/4 cup of butter softened, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 1 pound of powdered sugar, which is ridiculous. I probably won't be making this recipe for like a year. It was so much. And I went ahead and mixed that with my little hand mixer, move that around. But I'll show you guys, we did not use nearly all of that. So I poked it with a little knife, it came out clean, and then I went ahead and added my frosting after my cake cooled. You have to let your cake cool down. I'll show you guys here what it looks like. I don't know if you guys can see, but I had a bunch left over. I think I used like under half of that frosting mixture. And this was so stinking good. My family loved it. We devoured it. Alright guys, thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys next time.